Greetings. Welcome to the BIZ Info Zone. I'm Velyn Hawkins with Skyhawk Enterprises and Skyhawk Philanthropic Ventures, and I want to welcome you to the BIZ Info Zone, where we weekly, over here on Google Hangouts on Air, have a show giving you business information and news that empowers you to express your purpose, plan your next moves, and increase your profits. We are here today with our very special guest who's going to talk to us about reputation management. What is reputation management? Uh-oh, we've got a recording going on here. Bear with me. Let me see what that is and turn it off. All right. And I'm back. Don't you just love it when stuff pops up like that and just happens? Oh my gosh. All right, let me get back to the beginning here. We're here with my special guest today. His name is Josef Mack. He's an amazing guy who does some amazing work, and it is all in the area of reputation marketing, and reputation management. And today we're going to find out what reputation marketing is, what reputation management is, how they are married together, and how you can better have you and your reputation out, especially in the online world. You know, there's nothing like having somebody to give you a review on Google, on Yelp, on Bing, or anywhere else they want to give you a review, and it's not true. And, you know, maybe it's not in the most glowing light, but it's not false. What can you do about those kinds of things? Well, I want you to know, first off, that our guest talks about such an amazingly important matter that he's going to be a recurring guest on our show. We're going to have him on at least once a quarter, and he's going to bring you the information that is the up-to-date, what can I do, what do I need to do to protect myself, as well as what can I do when something occurs. And today, we're going to talk about the big things. What is reputation marketing and management, and how can I make it work for me? So welcome, Joseph. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lynn. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you inviting me.
Absolutely. I am so glad that we have connected. And when we talked about, and we actually talked about more than this aspect of what it is that you do. But what intrigued me so much about it is that reputation marketing spans everything that we do and can impact us from one area in all areas of the work that we do. So why don't we start out first of all, and let me ask you, who are you and why is this such an important topic for you to be talking about?
Well, I guess who am I? I have been working with local business owners and clients for the last 5 or 6 years. I spent about 35 years in the auto industry in a number of different capacities, and technology and computers and the internet has kind of been started out as a hobby way back when, but I just got very, very involved in it. And as I started looking at what I wanted to do when I retired from making cars, it was kind of sort of obvious for me as to the direction I wanted to go. And then as I started digging into what's been happening online, I think everyone's aware that Google and a number of the other internet marketing, or the internet marketing world, has just been going through a lot of changes. And with those changes, one of the things that Google started to focus on was small businesses, brick and mortar type businesses and so on. And in that process, they started to come up with ways that people could leave reviews online for other people so that they would have a good idea of where they wanted to go. When people go out and do what they do online, there's a common expression these days that says, let's just go Google it. And so when they go Google a restaurant or a doctor or a dentist, whatever the business may be, they see a map, they see a phone number, and one of the things that's very prominently displayed are the reviews. And so when it comes to people making a buying decision, we'll talk more about that, it's very important that people have a good reputation. And the way I kind of start out many of my presentations is I kind of say, what's the most important part of a house? And people sort of look at me and say, well, you know, is that a trick question? And the answer is not really, but it's not what many people think. I mean, you know, you can have a Taj Mahal and say you know, the interior, the spires, whatever, are the most important part, but the reality is the foundation is the most important part. Because if you built the Taj Mahal on sand, it wouldn't last very long. So you need to have a good, solid foundation, and that's what people are looking for when they go out looking online. They're looking for a business that has a solid foundation. You know, a business can have a great website, they can have a great storefront, but if their reputation is such that whenever anybody brings it up, everybody else that they bring it up to says stay as far away from them as possible because you don't want to go there. And so therefore it becomes a critical element to have as good a reputation as there is. Now, many people think that, well, you know, there's a good reputation and then there's a bad reputation. There's really actually 4 types of reputation. A good reputation, which we all know what it is. Then there's the bad reputation. And then there's no reputation. And a number of people will look at a business that has no recommendations, no reviews, and basically say, well, people must not think enough of them to leave them a review. So what I tell my clients is that no reputation, no reviews is as bad as a bad reputation. And then there's what we call the 5-star reputation. And with a 5-star reputation, ideally, it would be great to have a 5-star review from every individual that comes along the way. But the reality is, when you start looking at mathematical terms, anything greater than a 4.5 or 4.5 and up is really a 5-star review. Because let's face it, in the world that we live in, it's very highly probable that somebody is going to find something that they don't like, and so therefore they'll leave less than a stellar review. And one of the important things about the whole review process is about 5 or 6 years ago, Google implemented a process where they basically gave every brick and mortar business that they could find their own web page. It started out with Google Maps, and then it went to Google Places, and now it's kind of what we call Google Local Plus Business Pages. And so every business can claim that listing, and the ones that have come out since Google did that don't exist, they can create their own. And basically once you do that, you have a little bit of, I'll say, ammunition against the negative reviews. When a person or a business claims their Google Local Business Plus page and someone leaves a review that again is less than stellar, the business owner can actually come back and comment on that review, and they can do any number of things, but the one thing you don't want to do is start any kind of a tit for tat or any kind of blaming. I've been working with a salon for the last couple of years, and every so often they end up with a, let's say, less than stellar review. And one perfect example was an individual came in and she got her hair cut, styled, whatever the process was. I'm sorry, I don't know all the right words for what ladies get done these days, but basically they then put her under the dryer, and in her review she basically said, while I was under the dryer, I heard my stylist and another stylist talk about how shabbily all the people in the salon were dressed. They were talking about their love lives and a number of different things that you would think would be obviously less than, number one, professional and less than positive. So she went out and left a review basically saying all of that on Google, and I think she left them either a 1 or a 2-star reviews, which is kind of pretty bad. And so the business owner and I talked, and we came up with a strategy that basically went something like this. The business owner page obviously has been claimed and verified, which I did for her. And the comeback that we did was, we're very sorry that you apparently had this kind of an experience, because we don't necessarily know that we're acknowledging that experience, and I'll explain a little bit more why after I've stated this. We'd like to make this right. We'd like to contact you or have you contact us and let us further discuss what happened and what we can do about it. Well, many years ago, I did have a perm getting done every so often, and I was under a dryer myself. And when I read that review, the first thought that came to me was, how do you hear anything 5 or 6 inches away from being under a hairdryer? And so when I talked to the salon owner, she kind of agreed with me, and pretty much a number of people that I've shared the story with say you can't hear anything when you're under the dryer, right, Lynn?
Right.
So the challenge was that we felt that it was a bogus review. It was interesting that one of her main competitors that week got a couple of really good reviews. So you start looking at it and you say, what's going on here? So with the business owner coming back with that kind of a statement, there is a strong probability that whenever anyone goes to check them out and sees their score, which the rating will be part of, and they start going through the reviews and they see that one and they see the response back from the owner, they're going to first off say, how do you hear anything under the dryer? And then secondly, they're going to say, well, it looks like the business owner tried to make this right and tried to fix the situation, but nothing else has happened. Because it's important for everyone to know that there are really only 2 ways an online review can be changed or deleted.
Now, before you get to that, let me just review, because I really want people to understand what you're talking about here. So you said that as far as reputation marketing, reputation management, it starts at some place, and that place is the foundation, right? Most people go out and say, I want to find out something, go Google it. Whether it's a person, place, or a thing, they go Google it. That's the foundation, especially online, with where Google has brought themselves. They're pretty much the paramount source of information. Because you can't find your average restaurant and your person on Wikipedia. You can't find them in any other particular venue, but you can find them in Google. So, and then you mentioned that there are, and let me get this right, 4 types of reviews, right? The first one, which you said is the best, that you mentioned last, is the 5-star review. And then, you go from the good, and then you've got a bad, and then you've got no review, right?
Correct.
And no review is tantamount to a bad review. And, there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are basically in the space of, if nobody's saying anything, that's a good thing. They're not saying anything bad. But the reality is, and I used to think this myself for a while, that if no one is giving you the testimonials and the saying the things that you can then either put on your website or put, have them to comment in Facebook, then you're missing out, because people actually look at that stuff and add credibility or take away credibility from you because of that, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I want to get this set now, because we're talking about utilizing Google. And in our utilizing Google, we're talking, you mentioned 3 things that I picked up on. And one was, if you've basically, to paraphrase, if you've got a Gmail business account or a Gmail email account, Google is going to put up a business page for you. And then you need to do something. You need to claim it and set it up and all of that, right?
Correct.
And then you need to, or you want to, ask for reviews at that Google page. And then you want to monitor those reviews. That's where the management comes in, and you want to monitor those reviews, because if someone says something that is not true or that is less than desirable, you have an opportunity to respond to that, correct?
Correct.
Well, take us back to and give us a little more insight on this Google business page thing, because there are two types of businesses. Well, actually, there are three types of businesses. The first type is a brick and mortar business, right? That's anybody that's got real estate, that's got an address, that's doing business from a certain location. And then you've got a home-based business. And then in the middle, you've got what I'm going to call a virtual business. And so your home-based business is where your home business address is your home. And that presents some issues for me, because honestly, if I have a home-based business, I'd be kind of leery about putting my home address as my business address that goes out to the world. Although what we're finding these days is that that's going to happen anyway. So let's kind of talk about the virtual business for a moment, because this is where I think that a whole lot of home-based businesses, remaining home-based businesses, can move to add a certain level of security for themselves. And that is to have a business address that is a registered business address that they can get from the UPS store for a fee. You can pay it quarterly, I think quarterly, semi-annually, or annual, and it's very nominal. And you can buy a mailbox. And your mailbox space is registered as a business address. And you then can put yourself on this Google local business page with a business address and show up. Now, how does that work? I mean, a brick and mortar business is going to be there, and that's great for them. They don't have any issues around what it is that I'm trying to bring light to here. But the home-based business who wants to have their local business page up either has to do one of two things: have their home address showing, or have a business address by doing something like the UPS store or a virtual office acting as their mailbox. And tell us what the advantages are in that respect by virtue of what Google's doing right now.
Well, first off, you have to understand that this all started with Google Maps. So Google is very interested in actual physical locations. When I started with my own Google Maps, Google Places at the time, I used a P.O. box. And that flew for probably a year and a half. And then Google was kind enough to come out and say, you can't use a P.O. box anymore. And so at that point, the decision was, what do I do? Where do I go? And then people were talking about these virtual mailboxes or virtual boxes in either a FedEx, UPS facility, or in some kind of, there's other places that also have them. And because when you have an address, and this is very important for everyone to know, there's a thing called citations. It's your name, your phone number, and your address. And that has to be, wants to be identical everywhere that you go online. Because if you use the word street and spell it out, that's an address. If you use the word or the letters ST period, that's a different address, even though physically the stuff comes to the same place. Or if you just do ST with no period, a period makes a difference. Google spiders these things. They don't have real people, and they don't have the algorithms yet to understand that all three of those would be the same address. So you could end up with 3 different accounts, which is not a good thing because you're spread out too far, you're not consolidating everything. But the reality is Google has figured out where some of these virtual locations are, and they've basically been, I'll say, banning and not letting people use them, and essentially taking those pages down, because people's business pages can be taken down by Google for a number of reasons, such as not meeting terms and services, which can be an awful lot of different things. So what I did myself is I bit the bullet, and I'm using my home address as the address for my business, because it's kind of hard to be marketing reputation management without having reviews and without people saying, how is it that we can trust you? I've been fortunate enough right now to have about 14 reviews, because we'll talk about how challenging it can be to get reviews, and each one of them is a 5-star review, including the one from you, Lynn. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So the reality is it's not as simple as just going out and putting in a P.O. box. Well, again, P.O. boxes are not there, but a virtual office or a virtual location. And, it can be a hit or miss. And it's kind of like, there's still some businesses, for example, that use their personal Facebook page as a business page, and that violates the Facebook terms and services. And those businesses that I've met with and talked to about that, they basically seem to not think it's important, even when I tell them that in Facebook's terms and services, they can flat out delete that person's Facebook page if they're using it for business and it's a personal page. That's why they have business pages on Facebook. So there's a lot of little, I'll say, tips and tricks, or a lot of little challenges that come along the way, that when you get right down to it, at the end of the day, for me, a business owner, regardless of their business, again, be it doctor, lawyer, be it a restaurant owner, their business and their time should be spent improving and running their business, and not trying to figure out how to do all these other things. And the example I use is I live on 22 acres with about an acre of grass, and I pay my neighbor's kid $30 a week to cut the grass. Now, I could use the push mower and cut the grass myself, and it'd probably take me a number of hours, so it's not really cost effective. And it's the same kind of thing here. And where I was going before with a comment, there are only 2 ways that a review can be taken offline. One, if that review is either using profane language, or if it's obscene, or if Google, Yelp, Yahoo, Bing, if that review organization, that review site, deems it to be inappropriate, they can take it down. The only other way to get rid of, change a review is to have the individual that left the review change it themselves. The business owner, or if, for example, a business owner had me working for them, I could not go in and change a review like that. Google knows my IP address, they know where I'm coming in from, they know I'm not the person that left it. And for example, with Google, that was one of the ways that they basically tied up everybody and said, you got to have a G+ account, and we're going to use that to allow you to leave these reviews. Because if a person doesn't have a Google+ account, they cannot leave a Google review for someone. And we talked about this a little bit before, so let me just kind of put up this page that will show the perspective of what we're talking about. If you go through and take a look at this right here, whoops, this is essentially an eye chart, and it's kind of intended to be one. You'll notice.
Do your shared screen, Joseph, so we can see it.
I thought I did. It says that I'm sharing full screen.
Did you click on the PowerPoint page?
All right. I'm still getting used to this.
Yeah, now we see me.
Now we see you, not my screen.
There you go. Now you got it back.
Okay. These are not all, but a good number of the various review sites that are out there. There are some that are specific for weddings, or some that are specific for brides, for attorneys, for automobile dealers, and so on. And we've got obviously Twitter, Facebook, other places where people can comment. And the challenge is, when you take a look at all of this information, how do you figure out where someone has left a review for you? I have a couple of people in the B&I group that I'm in, and I talked to them and went to look at what their reputation looked like, and I found some reviews that they had no idea were even out there. So when you take a look at the social landscape, don't get me wrong, I do believe in the 80-20 rule, that 80% of what your business or what you're going to get comes from 20% of what's going on. And I put Google in that 20% from the perspective that a small element, you don't want to necessarily pick every one of these and spend a whole 8 hours a day going out and trying to look at them. You want to hit the big ones, and Google still is the 800-pound gorilla out there. And so when you look at it, people say, let's Google it, not let's Facebook it or Twitter it or Yahoo it or Bing it. And so that's where you're getting the biggest bang for the buck. But at the same time, some people will be looking at some of these other places, and they'll be drawing a conclusion and an opinion about who you are, what your business is. And so therefore, it's important to be aware, and it's important to have as many good reviews out there as you possibly can.
Wow, that is great. I love that infographic. And it had so many places. Should we have like a list of 2 or 3 or 4 places that we go on a consistent basis to see what's out there that's being said about us, if anything?
Well, I put the link up for the graphic, so if anyone wants to download it, they can go to my website through all of these pages. So it's up there if you want to look at it. As far as what to do, the answer is I would focus on the big ones. If you're using Facebook and you're using a Facebook business page, then obviously I would focus there. Twitter, they're limited to 140 characters, and to just put a post out there, I don't know that Twitter's really got a review site per se. But then you have Yahoo and Yelp and Bing and those other larger ones. I would say that if you take those, you'll have 80% of what you're looking for, with Google probably being 50%. Because like I say, I've yet to hear anybody say go Bing it or go Yahoo it. They all say go Google it. So when people are out and about and looking for places to find out what the reputation of a business is, 90% of them will go through and Google it and see what those results are.
Cool. Cool. That is great information. And just to recap again, the 2 ways that you have an opportunity to take down a review, the only 2 ways is, first, if it's inappropriate, and second, you can't do anything as the business owner. Only the person who has left the review can do anything. So that's really good information. Thank you for that.
If I could share one other thing about that, I've had some interesting experience with the salon again. She got a review from a bride, and it was basically a review that if any woman would read it, she would never ever, in however many lifetimes, go to that salon. And the interesting thing was, she left the review a little over a year after the wedding. And the review went something like this. Every time I take a look at my photo album of my wedding, I start to cry because my hair was just so terrible, and it went on from there. It was a real gut-wrenching, emotional type of response. I showed it to the owner, because the owner wasn't keeping track of reviews that she had online. And I said, we got to do something about this. She thought about it a couple seconds and said, I know her mother-in-law. So the owner of the salon went and talked to the mother-in-law and said, "Hey, what's going on?" When she left here, she was smiling. Now, what I figure happened is someone came to visit her a year later. She took out the album and she said, "Oh, I'm still so hurt by this." And that person said, "Well, you ought to go online and leave him a review." And that's what she did. So the mother-in-law talked to her. The bride changed the review. She, took the words and made them less stinging. Then a couple days later, she just flat out removed the review, and a week later, she wrote a letter of apology to the salon. Now, there's nothing I could do with that letter of apology because the way Google and the others look at it, anyone could have written that letter. So they want proof. They want to know that it's legitimate, because if it isn't, people will go back and sue them. So they're being overly cautious and overly paranoid about how reviews get put online and what and how they look like. So by her changing it, we could see that she changed it, because I was monitoring it daily at that point. And then, like I say, a couple days after that, she just flat out took it down. The good part of taking it down is it didn't get included in the score, because while reviews can kind of be pushed down in the process by getting more good reviews, the older ones tend to go down to the bottom, but the score is still the same. So when you take a look at it, it's very important for people to keep tabs on it, to go out and understand what's going on. And where I'm coming from is that while people can do this to a certain extent, they're never going to be able to go to all of these places and pages to see what their reputation comes across like online.
So I have a question, and I love the way that you explain that and the relationship of changing the review versus taking it off. And it really made a lot of sense that if you have someone that leaves you a review that is not as glowing as you thought it might be or could be, yet it was also too emotional. So changing it brought it to a space of putting it in a more real light, but changing it, I think also you want to have the piece of it that says, I was very emotional when I left this original review, and I just want to put all of this in the proper context, or some kind of explanation as to why it was changed. Is that something that you would recommend? So Joseph, if you could change your screen back to you, I think we'll be good, because you're still sharing screen. Okay, so my question was, in changing the review, do you want them to say that they changed it, or just change it to the better review?
Well, let me start out by saying prevention is always better than follow-up action.
Yeah.
So the challenge is, because there's so much writing on reviews, people need to be aware, for example, that the difference between a 4.2 review and a 4.3 review can be as much as a 10% impact on their business. Just 1/10 of a point. So people are looking at it, and they're trusting. 72% of the people out there trust an online review as if a friend or family member gave it to them. Now, once and so what my recommendation is you technically can't offer somebody a bribe to leave a good review. You technically can't ask them to leave a good review, because now you're influencing the reviewer, and they're going to be hard-pressed to not do that. What you can do, what I've heard people do over and over again, is say, okay, appreciate your business. Now, was there anything that we did that would prevent you from leaving us a good review? And good is relative. Some people think 4 is good, some people think 3 is good, some people think obviously that 5 is good. So when you do that, you'll get some feedback immediately. Then there's other ways of collecting reviews. I'll use the word loosely, filtering the reviews before they show up online. But at the end of the day, when someone comes back and leaves you a review that you don't like or that you think is not fair, the first thing that I would recommend is if you know that individual or can get in touch with them, make a phone call. See what you can do. Because a lot of times people are, I'm going to say, what, you're the owner of the company and you're calling me and you're concerned? Well, then you have an opportunity to see what you can do about improving it. And I have read some reviews where people have done pretty much exactly what you said, Lynn, where they've gone in and said, I went in, I had this bad experience, I talked to the owner contacted me, I talked to them, I understood that there were extenuating circumstances. What do you do if you're in a restaurant and an employee comes in drunk one day and all of a sudden messes a bunch of stuff up? Is that your fault? I mean, maybe you should have sent him home or whatever, but if you're short-staffed, there's a whole bunch of things out there. But communication is a huge item. And the other thing to consider, too, is getting people to leave reviews is not the easiest thing in the world because we're all busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so, people just either forget or they just flat out don't do it. And I might, give your go ahead.
Before you get there, and I do want you to talk about the whole getting people to leave you a review, good, bad, or indifferent. What they leave is what you have to deal with. But and I loved what you said about how to ask for the good review. Is there anything that we've done today that would deter you from leaving us a good review? I like that approach. But before we get there, I'd love for you to clarify one thing. The whole Google behind-the-scenes landscape where it has to deal with reputation marketing is actually quite new to a lot of people. And because of that, the whole the local business page, and it coming off of Google Maps, and it now is very relative to your business address. You have an opportunity to set up a profile, and this is the place where people leave you reviews. Now, what you mentioned a few times about a score, your review score. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, I think we all know the concept of a review rating from 1 to 5, 5 being the 5-star best. But talk to us about what this whole score thing means.
Okay, well, a couple things about score. Google started out with the 5 stars. And everybody needs to be aware that you can score things any number of ways. It used to be, how does it rate from 1 to 10? 10 being great, 1 being lousy. And that's a scoring system. Google, a couple of years ago, bought Zagat. And Zagat is a company of professionals that are statisticians. And they came up with a 30-point scale. So now if you looked at a review or a business that had a 28 and one that had a 27, you'd say, well, it's probably not that much different. But when you got a 5-point scale, 5 stars, and you look at one with a 5-star and one with a 4-star, it's fairly significant. And if you look at some of the Google pages where they have businesses' reviews, you'll now see them starting to shade in the star so that it looks like it's a little bit more than a 4. But underneath it, what they do is they take all of the ratings, a 5-star, a 3-star here, a 2-star there, and they do their mathematical calculation and translate that into a number. And the number is very important in terms of how people view this. Now, one thing that people should be aware of is when you do go to a Google page and look at reviews, you may see somebody that's got a 4.7 that's below somebody who's got a 4.5. And there's some reasons for that. Let's say you've got 500 reviews and you've got a 4.5 rating. And then let's say somebody else has got 1 review and it's a 5-star rating. Which one of the two would you go to? Obviously, a whole bunch of people thought more of the other place, and so therefore that 1 review could have been from a mother, brother, aunt, uncle, friend, or whoever. So the number of reviews are important. The rating of the review is important, and the interpretation that people will give to what they see is what the results are going to be. And it does and will be affecting the bottom line of every business more and more and more. I had an image up a little bit before about a business that had 416 negative reviews. And my comment to people when I give a presentation to them or we discuss their business, I typically say, and would you like to be number 417? Because when a business has got that many bad reviews, either they have a monopoly on the product or they're in a location where people don't want to drive hours to get to a different kind of a business. But at the end of the day, they're out there complaining. And one of the other things about reviews, just to help in the understanding, many people leave a review that goes something like this: great food, I like the atmosphere, nice people. Google and the rest of them will essentially view those reviews as being questionable. They're actually working on algorithms to determine whether a review is given by a legitimate person or not. In other words, is the English correct, or those kind of things. And so when you take a look at what that means, it's very important to remember as well, if somebody goes into a restaurant and they had a bad meal, they will write a litany. They will write a book about how bad it was, down to the detail of, it was 1 degree too hot for me. And so Google and the rest of them love stories. They love the engagement. I went to this restaurant on my 60th birthday, and I was thrown a surprise birthday party there. And the food was outstanding. And the owners actually got into it. The chef came out and he brought me a baked Alaskan, which was my favorite dessert, and that really happened. And that was essentially that in a few more words of a review that I left. So when you get the reviews, you want more than just a couple words. And I know it's not always easy to get, it was good is still better than nothing. But at the same time, when Google goes out and tries to come up with the score, a Google review like I just described about the restaurant with my birthday party, that review will score higher than a review where somebody says, I had a good time.
Okay, so somebody that has a service business other than a restaurant, say, a consultant or a coach or even a speaker, somebody that goes out and does a speaking presentation and they invite people to like their Facebook page, join them in Google Plus, and leave a Google review. Give us some suggestions about what that looks like. You already said, having the higher score, you want the more number of reviews is better, the review ratings being high is better, but the amount and the context of the comments is also important. So
it's very important. And you've got an excellent point, because when you take a look at the different businesses, let's take a public speaker, for example. If somebody's in an audience and there's a speaker up there and he's given a website, he's given his business information where people can probably find him online, a review could sound something like this. I was recently at this seminar and John Doe gave an outstanding presentation. He was very clear, very succinct. He shared a tremendous amount of information. And when it came time for questions and answers, he answered every question very thoughtfully, very considerately. I mean, you want to be positive, you want to be proactive, and you can do that pretty much with any kind of a business that you come across. Some are easier than others. It's obviously easier to rate whether the steak was medium rare or just flat out, grilled to utter disaster, as opposed to like a speaker or someone as a coach or something like that. But even a coach, someone that's a coach, hey, I've been having these challenges and I went to see John Doe for the last 2 years, and you know what? He's really, really helped me. I don't have any more panic attacks right now, or whatever the person is willing to share. So yeah.
So it really does help to have the more value stated in the comments that support the rating that you leave. I like that. And I think that, those of us who grew up on or started out with giving Yelp reviews. That's what Yelp wanted you to do. And it was most of the time for the restaurant or the massage therapist and people like that, because with Yelp you've got to do all of the whole registration process, and Google having the same sort of process, definitely still wants you to give the same kind of information in your reviews.
One thing that Google did do is, based on the business, they came up with categories for the rating. In other words, the atmosphere, the quality of the food, the service, and so people could break down what they're, how should I say, what they're reviewing about. Not every business has those kinds of categories that can be used, and I think it was their attempt, based on the business type again, to be a little bit more helpful for people, because if they put down service was terrible, and that was a year or two ago, it's highly possible that that server isn't there anymore, or that they have, I'll say, fixed what was going on, or you might just get a different server. So there's a lot of variables here, but at the end of the day, again, the thing that's most important is that the online reviews are viewed by, at this point, the statistics show us again, over 70% of the people believe them as if a friend or family member gave them a review. And so for lack of any other way of understanding or knowing or figuring out what's what, you know, how many times do we need a plumber or do we need an electrician and we just don't know anybody, or we don't belong to a group, or we know someone? Where do we go? You know, we may say to a friend in a conversation, hey, you know a good electrician around somewhere? They may give us a recommendation, or one to get or one not to get, and then we go with that. But online reviews are taking us by storm.
Yes, and I think you really made a good point there as to the value that's placed on online reviews. So, you know, before we started on this piece of the conversation, and I'm watching the clock, I do want you to talk about how to get people to leave you a review. You know, we talked about getting people to leave one is another thing that really you want to have a good strategy around.
Well, there's a couple things in the way of how to do that. The first one, it may seem extremely simple, but yet at the same time, it's very effective. Ask. Simple word of ask.
No, no, it can't be that easy.
The thing is, people feel uncomfortable asking for a review. You go into some restaurants and they'll actually have either a QR code on a piece of paper or a cardboard, and you can scan it and you can go leave a review online right from there. Or I'm sure you've seen the receipts or whatever that you get where underneath it says, you know, leave us your comment. But again, those aren't online. They're not typically, you know, the kind of feedback that that you can put online that way. Some people have, you know, come back and said, you know, we'll give you a free dessert or 10% off or a free drink or whatever. But to me, that's kind of walking the line of the gray hat, white hat, black hat. You know, black hat, you're doing something underhanded. White hat, you're doing everything above board. Gray hat, if somebody sees or recognizes that you're doing that, they may actually complain, and you could actually end up with some kind of legal action against you. So you want to be very careful. And, you know, beyond that, just, you know, in restaurants, a good thing is when the manager walks by and says, how was everything? And if people start to, I'll use the word complain, the manager can potentially prevent a negative review from happening depending on what they do. So asking, a lot of people don't. You can have cards where you can send them to a place. You can, you know, have a very unique domain name or URL where you say, you know, hey, please go to here, and I'd very much appreciate if you left me a review. So there's no real easy answer, and with what I've seen in the last couple, 3 years, we've got Google and the rest of them changing, I won't say every minute, but it's been basically, every couple of weeks or every couple of months where there's some nuance. Again, we went from maps to places to now the Google business pages. I don't know where the next one's going to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think you made such a great point about the whole ask thing, and it's how you ask. Most of this audience is, your speakers and coaches and your service providers who maybe the larger percentage are not brick and mortar businesses. They work in virtual spaces because they actually have the larger audiences, the global audiences. And so it's not like you're going to be able to give somebody a piece of a dessert for leaving a review for you. But if we're thinking about ways to do that, one of the things that comes to mind for me is doing a survey. If you've got a database of clients and you've got people who you want to know how it is that you fare, then doing a survey, an anonymous survey. Of course, anonymous surveys, they can, if they choose, to put their name to it and leave that for you. But to ask for something where they have an opportunity to give anonymous feedback, that's one thing. That information, good, bad, or indifferent, and this is the problem, I think, with that. If you choose some of this information that comes back to you, and you take all of the good comments and put those on Google as reviews for yourself, is that what you can do with it? And does that information easily get translated into Google, or should you ask them to just go to your Google business page and leave the information?
Well, there's some challenges with all of those items, and the challenge is if you give someone a piece of paper and they fill it out and you've got some words and a name, you can put that on your own business, on your own website. Pretty much everybody should have a tab that says reviews or testimonials, whatever you feel comfortable with. You can put it on your website. I cannot go online and leave it with Google because we're not the person that left it. They track us. That would be one of the easiest ways of getting your page shut down and maybe not being able to get another one along the way. So the difficulty becomes how to manage that. And I'll give you an example. Somebody right now should be asking the question, hey Joe, you said there's two ways that a review can be eliminated. One is obscene, inappropriate, whatever, and the other is the person. Why didn't I go to the lady sitting under the dryer, or have the owner go to the lady, or basically go to Google and say, hey, look guys, just get a couple of the ladies over there to take a look at this review, and they'll tell you it's bogus, that it either came from a competitor or whatever have you. Well, the reason I didn't do that was because if we would have gotten the review taken down, and then she goes back in and leaves another review again, only she doesn't say she's under the dryer, she just says she heard all of this. Now all of a sudden the business owner would lack credibility, or they would be, now people would look at it as being a legitimate scenario. Again, if you look at it that somebody's under a dryer hearing these things, it's highly unlikely that that's a real legitimate review. So there's the trade-off, and more things will be coming, as we talk more. And again, the landscape is changing, and we're finding more and other ways. But one of the things that people can do is they could potentially go back to Google, forget Yelp, but they can go back to Google and basically say, hey, I think this is inappropriate. I think if you take a look at a number of different review sites, they do have a box you can check that this is inappropriate. And I think what that may do is they may flag that a real live person will look at that. And the reason that I say forget Yelp, there have been a number of articles over the last couple of years where Yelp has basically come across as being very arrogant, and somebody said, hey look, I had an employee come in, they were drunk, I had to let them go, and 2 days later they put this review up for me. And Yelp's response was, well, so what, we get bad reviews too. So I haven't found them to be as, I'll say, user-friendly as Google has.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think too, if you're using Google, you're in Google, you're Googling it. For me, it was always the challenge of, oh, I've got to go another place, and it's called Yelp, it's called Bing, it's called Ask to look for something. I'm already in Google, where 90%, 80% of the population is. Why do another step? And where leverage and time and leverage come in for me and a lot of people, going to Google, where most people are, is where, honestly, I think that you want to play. And if we're looking at all of the things that you said, it actually sounds like Google is the big brother of internet reviews, like their big brother competing in this marketplace with LinkedIn, with Facebook, and now with the things that they are doing, they have cornered the market on what Facebook had started by adding the YouTube presence and adding things like the Google Hangouts on Air, where we can do things here with Google that you cannot do other places. And so they're bringing, I think, their market to them because of that. And one of the things that we want to do is to stay prominently aware of what is happening that's going to impact us. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to continue to have you on the show, Josef. You are just a wealth of information, and knowing you personally, I know the kind of time that you spend in staying on top of this thing called reputation marketing and management. And I so appreciate you for that. Now, I'm looking at the time, and I'm looking at, I really want to make sure that you have left with our audience the thing that you really want them to take away, to go away with. And so with that in mind, what is the one thing that you would say around what our conversation has been for today that you really want people to walk away with and to remember about this whole reputation marketing and management?
I guess I can sum it up this way. Your reputation is the most important asset that you have, because if you do not have a good reputation, people are not going to come to your business, they're not going to work with your products, they're just flat out going to disappear. And you're going to have not too many customers, and that hits the bottom line of your ROI. And be aware of what your reputation is. If a customer I have a saying that I use for myself: the customer is always right regardless of how wrong they are. I mean, that may sound like a cliche, but either they're not educated enough with what it is that you're doing or providing, or they have a misunderstanding, or there's something going on. And yeah, maybe there's 1% out there that are the bad apples that we can't do anything with. But those bad apples, just remember, all it takes is one bad apple in a basket that will cause the other ones to rot and basically go away. So you got to treat each customer as if they're gold and do what you can for them. And from that, I think that's the biggest element. And then, just be straightforward and honest, and ask them to leave a review. Ask them, what they think. Ask them to refer, because I belong to a BNI group, and there's 40 people in the group. And every week there's at least 5 or 10 that give a testimonial for somebody else in the group. And then the next week I stand up and say, I really appreciate that people are giving reviews and testimonials for other people in the group. You just hit 40 people, which is great. But the city's got 60,000 people in it. The state has got however many million people in it. The world has got however many. I mean, I've got one of the guys who's an auto repair guy. He got a phone call one day. There was a couple on vacation from Germany that were here. They were having car problems. Basically, somebody recommended him to them. He did an outstanding job. When they got back home, they left him a great review. So, when you think about it, reputation reviews are the key cornerstone of helping your ROI.
So ask for it and manage it when you get it. When it comes in, you say thank you, and if it's something that requires more attention, you have the opportunity to do that, jump on it, and get it done. I like that. And what we've been talking about today is reputation marketing and management. And Joseph said that it is the foundation of what it is that you're doing in your business, because if people look at you and see bad reviews and that impacts your reputation, it's also going to impact your business, bottom line. And we want you to be successful. We want you to do the things that are going to increase your revenue, give you an opportunity to really express your passion and plan your next moves in your business. That's what we're doing here in the BIZ Info Zone and on the BIZ Info Zone show. Our guest today has been Josef Mack. Joseph, tell us how our audience can get in touch with you.
Well, there's a couple ways. Obviously, one is through you.
Absolutely. So we're going to post Joseph's information on this page in Google Hangouts. So if you come back to this page, you can get to the replay of today's session as well as find Joseph's contact information. But I want it for the audio piece. So what is it?
I will I'll put up this one slide, but people can get a hold of me at 810-689-4069 because there's an awful lot of other information out there. Or my website is Local Mobile Marketing CHBS.com.
Fabulous. And I just have to say, put that slide back up. Oh, you can't while I'm talking. But Joseph does website design. He does website cleaning. If you have ever had somebody hack into your website, you know what a nightmare that is. So, Joseph, I'm gonna stop for a moment. I want you to explain those 4 things that you've got up there on that slide about what it is that you also do besides talking and educating on reputation marketing.
Well, the couple things that are out there these days is mobile has gotten really huge. Desktop computers have pretty much become a boat anchor. Laptops are, they're still a bit cumbersome. Then we've got the iPads, but mobile, whether it's a pad or a smartphone, is basically taking things by storm. I mean, you just walk around and you'll see people from all age groups. I mean, the other day I saw someone in a restaurant, they had to have been 70 years old, my guess, and they were busily texting away on their smartphone. I also do website design work because one of the things that I help my clients with is to incorporate how to get reviews and other things online. And Lynn, just one comment about that. When it comes to the reviews, I talked about commenting on someone's review that's a negative review. It's also a good thing to comment on someone and thank them for leaving a review. And then I have a site, it's called wpsitescrub.com, that helps with improving the speed and optimizing WordPress sites, because there's about 22+% of all the websites in the world are now WordPress sites, and it's important that the pages load as quickly as possible. And then there's a whole plethora of other things that I help my clients with around internet marketing, reputation marketing, and things like that. So thank you for having me. I appreciate the time. And,
absolutely. And I would be remiss if I didn't let people know that you do have a special offer going right now for $97. You're doing something with your site scrub thing. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, what it is evaluating your WordPress site in terms of, there's a number of things. For example, people have, I'll say, superfluous plugins in their site. People have made a number of changes over time. For example, I've got about 40 websites myself right now between my clients and myself, and I just went to one of the sites that I had not too long ago, and I optimized the database for that site, and I found out of apparently about 25 databases, 10 of them were not up to date. And so it's like an equation, A plus B plus C plus D. Every element, the number of plugins you have, how many images that you have that aren't optimized, whether the database is optimized or not. All of those things, whether you have trash, whether you have spam, all of those things come into play, and the site for that is http:// WP site, scrub, scrub.com. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks. And like I said, we'll have this information up on the G Plus Hangout page, and you'll be able to get all of that. We will announce when Joseph is going to be back on the show, and we'll let you know what that topic is, because this thing about reputation marketing and management is going to be even more important as we move forward in this digital and online world. And there's a lot of stuff that SEO related that impacts this as well. So stay tuned. Thanks for joining us on the BIZ Info Zone show today. We'll see you next week, where we've got a really great guest for you too. You'll be able to see some of that information on the website at skyhawkenterprises.biz, and just click on the tab that says BIZ Info Zone Shows and join us again. Thanks. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you, Lynn.
All right, everybody. Bye-bye.